I wanted to pose a theory, and that is that the more rights pagans get in this country, the more pushback we get from religious fundamentalists. It seems that these fundies that don't understand our religion because they only see it from the context of their own religion find it necessary to speak their minds and, use hate speech in order to try to suppress us however they can. And the thing is that, unfortunately, if we don't speak up and if we don't make our voice heard, they could be successful. If we don't say, hey, we deserve our rights, then it's very easy for us to lose them. And so I find these videos necessary, even though I know a lot of you tire watching them. And I will try to get back to some educational stuff as soon as possible. But I do think that it's necessary for me to call these people out so that the general public can see how ridiculous they are. And I realize that most of the general public already does, but it needs to be said.
Well, I had been into paganism of every kind. You're not telling me nothing I don't know about paganism.
Obviously, you weren't pagan, at least not the way I use the term, nor the way the government uses the term, nor the way the article referred to neo-pagans. And I love, like almost every other quote-unquote ex-pagan, how you have an utter lack of explanation about your so-called ex-pagan beliefs.
And one thing I know from pagans, and having been around them, having been a part of the whole shebang and stuff, one thing I do know, there's this deniability thing. People tell themselves what they want to hear. Especially when you're dealing in paganism and when you're into something. Like, I had once hated Christianity.
You don't really explain yourself here. Are you suggesting that we blatantly deceive ourselves about our intentions towards Christians or about our belief system? I'm not quite sure. What I do know is that you're blatantly deceiving yourself about whether or not you actually hate pagans. You go around this video and you say that you don't hate them, but then you say things like that we're your enemy and things like that, and we want to kill Christians, and that we all blatantly deceive ourselves. So therefore, you're using hateful words and hateful tactics, but yet you deny that you hate us. So, if anyone's blatantly deceiving themselves, it's you.
Now, you're saying you didn't hate Christianity and all this. Now, as far as you individually, I cannot say about you as a person individually.
But you did say about me personally by claiming that my community, all of my community, hates and wants to kill Christians. You were talking about me because you were talking about pagans. So yes, you did bring me personally into this.
But are any of your personal little friends who believes just like you do?
I love the condescending nature of this bigot. Say my little friends, as if I have no diverse group of friends that includes people of different religions or different beliefs besides my own. This couldn't be further from the truth, and I'll explain. When I lived in Chicago, I used to be on the board of a large group of pagans called Earth Spiritualists of Chicago. They had over 400 members, and there were several different religious groups represented there. There was even Christians who were members. And what I'm going to show you in this annotation is a video that was done last year. It's a unity ritual with several different religious beliefs all in one. And yes, there were Christians present. I was sitting next to one. So to suggest that I have, no experience to judge the pagan community by, and that my friends aren't diverse in their belief system is actually ridiculous. Because I have proof right here that my belief system is very diverse from that of my friends. I have Christian friends, I have pagan friends, I have atheist friends, and I always will. So, you're just trying to judge me by what you think you know about me, and that's wrong.
First of all, I was just reading the thing.
That was a blatant lie. You were not just reading the thing. You were equating paganism with Nazism. You stated your opinion, and you didn't just read the thing.
And yes, I just don't agree with paganism, period.
And I don't agree with Christianity, but you'll never hear me suggest that it's a bad thing that they have their religious rights.
Did I agree? Do I associate it with Nazism? Actually, the other way around.
If you didn't suggest that modern pagans haven't been inspired by the Nazi Party, then why did you bring it up?
See, Nazism was getting its stuff from paganism.
I'd just like to point out that most neo-Nazis are Protestant Christians.
You can talk your talk, and anyone could say that what you're talking is hate speech.
Of course, anyone can say what somebody is saying is hate speech, but opinion and fact are two different things. What I stated was fact, and I'll show you by showing you the definition of hate speech. This is the legal definition of hate speech. Speech not protected by the First Amendment because it is intended to foster hatred against individuals or groups based on race, religion, gender, sexual preference, place of national origin, or other improper classification. You said that pagans want to kill Christians. That is obviously trying to incite hatred against a religious group. Hate speech by the book legally. In other words, this isn't just my opinion, this is fact.
I will only allow civil comments and nothing more.
If you only allow civil commentary, you should take down your video because your video was not civil. You used hate speech. You incited violence against other people.
You know, anything that tears down others, you know, I'm against it now.
If you're truly against tearing down others, then you owe the pagan community an apology.
Paganism is against God.
Actually, paganism came before your God. So your God would be against paganism, not paganism against your God.
It is a mockery of God.
I don't think you quite understand what the word mockery means. Mockery means to imitate. And since paganism came before Christianity, Christianity mocks paganism. It mocks their deities. It mocks their symbols. It mocks everything almost from paganism, even their holidays, because, Christianity is unoriginal. If you look at Jesus shares characteristics with pagan deities. I suggest that you read Hero of a Thousand Faces by Joseph Campbell.
I forbid it in my life, and I tell others who are brothers and sisters in Christ, if they think about doing it, that's not right.
What you don't realize is that it's absolutely impossible to escape paganism, or witchcraft for that matter. If you understood what magic was, you'd realize that you do it every day. You're doing it right now while you're making this video. And escaping paganism is impossible. Even the days of the week are pagan. Even the cross can be traced to paganism. I mean, there's several different pagan cultures, the Greeks, the Egyptians, the Druids, that all had crosses as part of their symbology to symbolize things like the four elements. It's ridiculous for you to assume that you can escape this. By the way, your username is pagan. Animism is the belief of indigenous people, and a lot of animistic cultures name their children from their surroundings from when they were born, the Native Americans included. So if someone saw a running wolf while you were born, you might have been called Running Wolf, and therefore you have a pagan username. Not to mention that a lot of pagans that you'll see here espouse animals as part of their username to take on the characteristics of that animal. This is another pagan thing that we cannot escape in this culture. It happens all the time. You see it a lot in sports mascots. So if you watch football, you're watching an ancient pagan tradition.
God gives you right and wrong. You
claim that God gives us right and wrong, but these are the immoralities of the Bible, and they include religious, sexual, gender, and cultural persecution, slavery, torture, mutilation, forced ignorance, fear-mongering, murder, child abuse, etc. I certainly wouldn't be getting my morals from the Bible. And that's probably why, people like you get flagged off of YouTube for hate speech, because you're not being moral by today's set standards. It's one of the reasons why the Bible isn't really effective today.
I do not uphold anything that is against God, and Nazism, and paganism, homosexualityism, and adulteryism, drugism, and all kinds of isms and things, all of the whole thing that God forbids, I'm against.
It's your right to hold certain opinions about things, but you cannot just incite violence upon other people without expecting to have some kind of, pushback to that. And that's exactly what you did. You said that pagans want to kill Christians and infringe upon your rights. And that's not true. In fact, you're the one that wants to infringe upon our rights.
Yes, I hate sin. I hate evil, because God hates evil. But hating people, not likely.
If you don't hate, then why generalize us the way that you do? Why assume we all hate Christians, that we all are out to destroy you? To say such things is to hate, and to show your true emotions towards us. Because if you did not hate us, you would not try to incite violence against us.
In fact, the Lord encourages to pray for our enemies, to...
This is exactly what I'm talking about. If you don't hate me, then why do you consider me an enemy?
They always point out things at Christians, but never look at their own hypocrisy.
I think by now I've pointed out how hypocritical you are by saying that you don't hate us, but you really do. You call us your enemy. But you haven't really pointed out how I'm being hypocritical at all. You just call me a hypocrite.
And in paganism, everyone, especially when it comes to Europeans and Americans who adopt paganism, they're the most biggest phonies because they're not being themselves. They're adopting, going after things that's what, you know? I make my choices. If you decide to go after false gods that ain't real and false things, that's your choice.
I'd just like to point out that choice has nothing to do with belief. You don't choose what you believe. It's impossible. Your belief is based on your experience, your personal logic, and your education. And you can't choose what you think is real, more than you can choose to believe that the sky is purple when it's actually blue. It doesn't make any sense. What you do have a choice in is how you act towards others. And you, sir, act like a bigot. Just because you believe a specific deity is real does not mean that you have to believe all the myths are real. For example, I believe in the Greek gods, but I don't believe the myths are 100% true, because I think that they were written by people who had those things revealed to them, and they might not have gotten everything 100% correct. And the same thing can be said for Christianity.
Either Jesus Christ or the devil.
This is what we call a religiocentric perspective. It's typical of religious bigots. They refuse to try to understand their quote-unquote enemy's worldview. And the reason they do this is because they want everything to conform to their worldview. And anything that goes outside of the way they see things is intolerable to them. And they must try to stamp it out because their ego can't handle it.
Have you ever read Ezekiel chapter 33?
As a former Christian, I've read the Bible several times. But it's irrelevant to me now because I don't see that as truth.
But I am not of hating people. That is against God.
I'm just going to post another Bible quote in annotations so you understand where I'm coming from. There are a lot of good Christians out there that don't believe the same way you do. And the reason is they've accepted that even though they believe that Jesus is their God, the Bible is not 100% true. When you believe something is infallible, it becomes rigid. You become fundamentalist to it. And that's when logic simply gets thrown out the window, because you can no longer then justify anything without justifying it by the Bible.